Current issues in the Orthodox Church on abortion. This is a question which often arises among our young people. It is one of those to which the Church has long since given a direct definition. In view of the fact that contemporary anti-Christian propaganda asserts that there is absolutely nothing immoral about killing of a baby in the womb, we should repeat here a few facts connected to this issue. Fact 1. The Church, beginning with the Old Testament, has always forbidden killing in the womb. In Exodus we read, "And if two men strive and smite a woman with child, and her child be born imperfectly formed, he shall be forced to pay a penalty. But if it shall be perfectly formed, he shall give life for life." Exodus 21:22-23. Abortion is clearly considered murder. In other books of the Old Testament, we often come across an understanding that human life begins before birth, in the mother's womb. In Psalm 138, we read, "For thou hast possessed my reins, O Lord, thou hast holpen me from my mother's womb. My bone is not hid from thee, which thou madest in secret." Psalm 138. In the prophet Jeremiah, we find, "Before I formed thee in thy belly, I knew thee. And before thou comest forth from the womb, I sanctified thee. I appointed thee a prophet to the nations." Jeremiah 1:5. The prophet Isaiah writes, "Thus saith the Lord God who made thee, and he that formed thee from the womb, thou shalt yet be helped." Isaiah 44. Fact 2. Although there is no definite dogma on this, many church fathers consider that a person is complete, that is, possessing both a body and a soul, from the moment of conception, because he receives not only his body from the union of his parents, but also his soul. In his book, Orthodox Dogmatic Theology, Presbyter Michael Pomazansky refers to the following Holy Fathers on this point. In the view of other teachers and fathers of the Church, both soul and body receive their beginning simultaneously and mature together. The soul proceeds from the souls of the parents, just as the body proceeds from the bodies of the parents. In this way, creation is understood here in a broad sense as the participation of the creative power of God, which is present and essential everywhere, for every kind of life. The foundation of this view is the fact that in the person of our forefather Adam, God created the human race. "He hath made of one blood all nations of men." Acts 17:26. From this it follows that in Adam the soul and body of every man was given in potentiality. But God's decree is brought into reality in such a way that God holds all things in his hands. He giveth to it all a breath and all things. Acts 17:25. God, having created, continues to create. St. Gregory the theologian says, "Just as the first body, which was originally formed in us of dust, subsequently became the source of all human bodies, and has not been cut off from the first formed root, one man containing others within him, so also the soul, being inbreathed by God, from the time comes together into the formed composition of man, being born anew, and from the original seed." In his diary, St. John of Kronstadt has this observation: "What are human souls? They are all one and the same soul, one and the same breathing of God, which God breathed into Adam, which from Adam until now is disseminated to the whole human race." This understanding is expressed in the church feast days of the conception of the Holy Mother of God and of St. John the Baptist, as well as the celebration of the beginning of our salvation, the Annunciation. In the services, the newly conceived are talked of as complete people. We are all familiar with the meeting between Elizabeth and the Virgin Mary as described by St. Luke. "And when Elizabeth heard the salutation of Mary, the babe leaped in her womb." Luke 1, verse 41. Here it is clear that the infant in the womb was not only a complete individual human being, but it was capable of reacting to other things outside the womb. Such examples are also found in the lives of saints. An example being Saint Sergius of Radonij, while still in his mother's womb, cried out during the liturgy. This all conforms with the view of the Church that the embryo is an autonomous individual human being, and that the termination of his being from the moment of his conception is nothing other than murder. Fact 3. From the earliest times there existed church laws and edicts against abortion. In the 1st century Didache, in the 2nd chapter we find a direct prohibition of abortion. Also, church fathers right from the beginning opposed abortion. For example, St. John Chrysostom, while denouncing adulterers, says, "And why sow there, where the very field itself is preparing to destroy the fruit, where murder is committed before birth, so that you not only keep a whore in her promiscuity, but even make her a murderess? Do you see how from drunkenness comes fornication, from fornication adultery, from adultery murder?" Fact 4. The Church has always considered abortion a grave sin and prescribed a severe punishment on those who commit this offence. Canon 21 of the local council of Ankara states, "Women conceiving after adultery and destroying the fruit, and those who prepare infanticidal poisons whereby a former ruling forbidden to receive communion unto death. And this they follow. Seeking however a more condescending solution, we decree that such are to undergo a 10-year period of penitence, following the normal stages." One notices here that it was unthinkable to the fathers of the council that anyone could want to destroy fruit conceived in wedlock, and so talk only of those who conceive after adultery. St. Basil in his 2nd canon rejects all talk of dividing the development of the embryo into stages. He writes, "Anyone who deliberately destroys an embryo in the womb is liable to prosecution for murder. We do not make any fine distinctions between developing and as yet undeveloped embryos." And in his 8th canon he says, "Those who give medical treatment for the sake of aborting the embryo in the womb are murderers. Likewise those who take infanticidal medications." Is this not all obvious, fathers and brothers, to our flocks? Are we not wasting our time on commonly accepted facts? Unfortunately, the prohibition of abortion is not commonly accepted, even among Orthodox. Here is an example from the pastoral activity of our first hierarch, Metropolitan Vitali, who recounted to me by eyewitnesses. After the war, at the refugee camp of Fischbeck, the Metropolitan, then an igumen, noticed that among the young couples the birth rate was almost zero. Guessing the reason, he began from the pulpit and in his personal pastoral contact to preach against abortion. We often hear the opinion that in the last 70 years communism has destroyed Russia. This is of course true, but normally people are referring to the economy and the environment. It is rarely that anyone realizes that the country has been turned into a land of murderers. According to the most conservative estimates, the average Soviet woman undergoes 6 abortions. Last year, the Russian edition of Orthodox Life noted the following: "Every 4th abortion in the world is Soviet. If one takes into account that among Central Asian women abortion is rare, then it is obvious that Russia, the Ukraine, Belarusia, the Baltics, and Moldova are affected by an epidemic of infanticide. Every year, according to official figures, in our Russian land, 8 million people, the population of Moscow, are killed by their mothers in their womb. In actual fact, the real figures are higher." Of course, it is not only the women, but also the fathers who are guilty of the murder of their children. Thus, the majority of the population directly takes part in murder. Is this not one of the main obstacles to a rebirth of Russia? Also, here in the diaspora, not all acknowledge the seriousness of the question.